maybe a miracle will happen, and maybe we'll see you as well. We do hope so.
Thank you.
And so I'd like to welcome you to a really extraordinary service. It is still Shabbat. The sun hasn't gone down totally, but at the same time, we now are welcoming in another holy event, and that is the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai and the celebration of Shavuot, which of course involves the first fruits of the season in Israel. It involves eating cheesecake, which we did, which was delicious, by Chef, I wonder what his name is, Chef Jacob Hurwitz, that's right.
Hurwitz, yes.
And it really was delicious, and milk tart and everything else. But if you like, we had a pre-Shavuot introduction. And this evening, it'll be evening soon, our wonderful educator is going to lead us into an actual Shavuot service or event. And it's very special. Shuls throughout South Africa, I can't say the world because the time is different, of course, will be doing the Shavuot service this evening. This morning was like an Erev Shavuot. And I think we're very fortunate to have Leo with us, who really is an extraordinary student of Torah, of Mishnah, of everything that we need as Jews to guide us on our path through life.
Amen.
Because after all, that is what Judaism is. It's a set of laws and regulations. And Leod, I loved what you said this morning. Before I hand over to you, if I can please repeat what you said. You said, yes, we also celebrate getting always, every Shabbat morning, we thank Hashem for freeing us from slavery and bringing us into freedom. And yet that freedom for all mankind, but specifically for the Jewish community, is to know what we cannot do, what we may not do. That freedom, as Lael said so beautifully this morning, has restrictions on our thoughts, on our minds, and particularly on our actions. So we look forward now, Lael, to much more of Torah study with you tonight. Over to you, Lael.
Thank you, Reva. Thanks, everybody. It's lovely to all be together. It's just lovely to look up and see such a lovely community. I know some people want to join the Beit Emmanuel or the SAUPJ service a bit later, in about half an hour. So I'm going to keep it quite quick. We're not going to do our Mincha Havdalah because there are services tonight, and one doesn't do Havdalah now because we're going into another Chag. So I thought instead we should do what is traditional to do on Shavuot, which is to study the Torah. So at many congregations, people hold what's called a Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which is an all-night, for many people, study of Torah, which will happen tonight. Some people do it for a few hours, some people go the whole night. So we're not going to do either of those things, but we're just going to spend a little time now, perhaps half an hour together, just studying one aspect of Torah. And I thought what would be nice, because we are really asking ourselves as Jews on this Chag of Shavuot, what is it all about? What is the Torah all about? And as Reva was just commenting, what we were saying this morning is that Shavuot is the twin of Pesach. So the word Shavuot means weeks. So this is the festival of weeks. And as Reva also pointed out, Shavuot also has an agricultural basis in the Torah and in Jewish history, because it is the festival of the ingathering of the harvest. But aside from that, it is the festival of weeks. Why weeks? Because it is 7 weeks since Pesach. It's the end of the counting of the Omer. So you can hear from the word weeks that it's weeks from something, and the something is Pesach. So Shavuot is in fact a twin of Pesach. Pesach and Shavuot exist as two bookends of the same process. And what is that process? That process is the attainment of freedom in order to receive the Torah. And as we hear in the Torah, and we read it in the Shema, Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiyot lachem le'Elohim, that God says, I took you out of the land of Egypt in order to be your God. So we were not given freedom simply for its own sake. We were not given freedom just to do as our heart desires. That's not what we see freedom as being. As soon as we get freedom, we immediately restrict it. How do we restrict it? We restrict it with the laws of the Torah. And the laws of the Torah, both positive and negative, impose on us a series of responsibilities and a series of guidelines of how to live our lives. So a free life is not simply, about doing what one feels like. A free life is about using freedom for the benefit of the world around us, and also for our own benefit, but particularly for our own spiritual benefit, if I can put it that way. So we have freedom so that we can magnify the light within. We have freedom so that we can magnify the neshama that God has given us. We have freedom so that we can also bring light to those around us. That is the purpose of freedom, and we get that through receiving the Torah and through entering into a covenant with God to carry out the mitzvot of the Torah. So it has been an exercise in certain periods of Jewish history to try to summarize what the Torah means. You remember from the Pirkei Avot that one of the rabbis, I think it was Hillel, is asked, can you please summarize the entire Torah while I stand on one leg? And the rabbi says, he actually says, yes, I will try to do that. And then he says, the entire Torah can be boiled down to one commandment, which is love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, go and learn it. So in saying go and learn it, clearly he's not saying go and learn one line. He's saying that the learning of the entire Torah comes down to the idea that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. Now, a different kind of attempt was made by a very important rabbi, Moshe ben Maimon, Maimonides, the Rambam, who lived he was born in 1138. And he wrote a number of very, very important texts. One of them was a book called Commentary on the Mishnah. And in chapter 10 of Commentary on the Mishnah, he sets out what he believes to be the 13 articles of the Jewish faith. In other words, he says the whole of the Jewish faith can be distilled into 13 ideas, and that these 13 ideas are ideas that are binding upon anybody who claims to follow Judaism. Now, there's some controversy about even the attempt to do this. The idea of articles of faith for some people is not a good idea, but nonetheless, a person no less than the Rambam set out an attempt to really distill what we believe in as Jews. And I would like to go through them briefly. Now, the reason I can go through them briefly, because you would think this is a major study, and well, it is, but is that they were, in the 14th century, put to music. And that music is present in our Siddur as the song Yigdal, which is on page 628. And I'm going to ask Jacob to flight that. Thank you so much, Jacob. So the song Yigdal is, in fact, what it is it's a song which tries to summarize the text that Maimonides wrote, chapter 10, in which he tries to summarize the 13 articles, the articles of faith, of which he says there are 13. So Yigdal is a song, is a prayer that is very commonly sung, particularly on the Shabbat. And it is also a very beautiful song. There is some debate about who wrote the Yigdal as a hymn, because it's not exactly the same words as what Maimonides sets out. It's a kind of a summary. Leopold Zuntz, the great German Jewish scholar, says that it was written by a man called Daniel ben Yehuda Dayan in 1404. But there are others who argue that a person called Emmanuel of Rome is in fact the author. Whether he's the author of this, what we do know about Emmanuel of Rome is that he made several attempts at putting Rambam's 13 principles into verse. He wrote several poems, which were attempts to do this. And music scholars say that Yigdal shares the rhythm, rhyme, and a number of phrases with the poem written by Emmanuel of Rome. So we're not sure if it was written by Emmanuel of Rome or it was written by Daniel ben Yehuda Dayan. But what we do know is that the text itself comes from Maimonides. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Maimonides, and I am going to tell you, we're going to look at what the 13 articles of faith are. But it is the Shabbat. We get together partly for the purposes of spiritual growth and tranquility, and that comes through song and prayer. So what I'm going to do first is sing the Yigdal, and then I'll try and get into some of the heavier aspects of what it is all about. If you know this, please sing it in your own space. It goes like this. Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach nimtza v'yenet el metziuto echad v'en yachid keyichudo nelam v'gam en sof le'achduto ein lo demut haguf ve'eno guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'en reshit lereshito hino adon olam lechol notzar yoreh gedulato umalchuto shefa nevuato netano ela anshe segulato v'tif'arto lo kam beYisrael kemoshe od navi umabit et temunato Torat emet natan le'amo el al yad navio neman beito lo yachalif ha'el ve'lo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato sofe ve'yodea setarenu mabit lesof davar bekadmato gomel ish chesed kemifalo noten l'rasha ra kerishato yishlach leketz yamin al kol basar rucho liftot mechai keketz yeshu ato chaye olam nata betochenu Baruch Adonai Shem Tehilato Chaye Olam Nata Betochenu Baruch Adonai Shem Tehilato. So that is the beautiful Yigdal, which has come to us from our ancestors, if I can put it that way. It's at least 600 years old, and it's based on ideas that are about 1,000 years old. So who was Moses Maimonides? Moses Maimonides, Moshe ben Maimon, also known as the Rambam, which is simply an acronym of Harav Moshe ben Maimon, Rambam. Moses Maimonides was a great Jewish scholar and a physician, a doctor, who wrote extensively on Jewish thought. He was an extraordinary philosopher who also wrote on the theme, on the question of logic, and is indeed recognized as one of the great philosophers of his generation, in addition to being one of the greatest Jewish scholars of all time. So Maimonides was born in Cordova in Spain in 1138. So 1138, what is that? 900 years ago, more or less. And Spain at that time was under Muslim rule. but it was under Muslim rule of a very kind of enlightened and pluralistic sort, where other religions were also respected, and study of other religions was encouraged. Unfortunately, that changed when Maimonides was 10 years old in 1148, when a new group of Muslim rulers, the Almohads, invaded Spain, took over the government, and they did not believe that anybody should be able to practice any other religion. And they basically gave the subjects of Spain three choices: either to, this includes Christians, either to convert to Islam, to go into exile, or to be put to death. So Maimonides' family, who were a well-to-do and well-known family, elected to leave the country, and they went on a long and arduous overland journey, eventually settling in Morocco in the year 1160. And Morocco, which was also a predominantly Muslim country, was nonetheless a pluralistic society in which all religions were tolerated. 6 years later, they moved again, this time to Egypt, which was a similar kind of culture. And it was there that Maimonides wrote his great works in Egypt. Firstly, he became a doctor. He was a well-known physician. He wrote, his first book was called Treatise on the Art of Logic. And then he went on to write a number of Jewish masterpieces. One of them is called Commentary on the Mishnah, which is considered one of the great commentaries on the Talmud. He also wrote a book called Guide to the Perplexed, which is a wonderful title, don't you think? I'm sure all of us feel perplexed at times, and a guide to the perplexed is a kind of a guide through Jewish law. Maimonides believed that the aim of all law was not simply to fulfill mitzvot, but was to improve and refine the body, and more importantly, the soul. So he saw the task of life and the role of the Torah as refining the soul, and that God gives you a soul, and it is your job to refine and magnify and improve that soul up until the time when you die, when you return that soul to God. So God entrusts you with a soul, and it is your job to magnify that soul, and that the aim of Jewish life, both spiritual and material, is in fact to do that, and that one cannot refine the soul and magnify the soul without a commitment to other people. So those are the sort of basic ideas of Maimonides. Then he is asked, but what do Jews believe? And he sets it out in the 13 Articles of Faith. And now they are translated there on page 629 on the left-hand side. There are a number of sources where they are set out in much greater detail. But what I'm going to do is just kind of run through what each of them is, the 13 articles. And we're going to use what's written on the left-hand side, the translation, to do that. But those who are interested, there's some very nice literature that you'll easily find on the internet, which discusses the 13 principles of faith. So let's go through the 13 principles, 13 articles of faith. Yigdal, can you hear the word Yigdal? Can anybody see what the root of the word Yigdal might be? Does it remind you of something, Yigdal? Can you find a word there that you know?
Gadol.
Gadol, well done, Lawrence. And the word Gadol means?
It was Jacob.
Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Jacob, forgive me. Jacob, what does Gadol mean?
Large or big.
That's right. It means big or large or great. Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach. God is great. God lives. Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach. God is magnified and praised. Ve'en et el metziuto. So here how is it? It's translated on the left. Magnified and praised is the living God. God's existence is eternal. God's unity is infinite. God is unfathomable, and God's oneness is ending. So that actually takes up the first two articles of faith. So firstly, what is said here is simply this, that we believe in the existence of the Creator, and that the Creator is perfect in every way, and is the creator of all, is the cause of all existence. It says here in the English, God is unfathomable, and that really means that you can really translate that as there is no way of understanding his being. So God is great, God is eternal, and God is unfathomable. It goes on to say, Echad ve'en yachid keyichudo. What does the word echad mean?
One.
One. Echad means one. God is one. Ve'en yachid keyichudo. God is one, and there is no oneness like his oneness. There is no singularity like his singularity. So what does that mean? It's quite a difficult concept, but what it means is this: God is one, but normally when we use the word one, we use it in relation to other numbers, 1, 2, 3. God's oneness is not one of a number. It's not that there's God and then there's some other in his company. No. God's oneness is particular. God's oneness is absolute, and there is no singularity like his singularity. He is singular. He is not single, but he is singular.
I think it's more like an entity. One entity.
Exactly. He is a singular entity of which there isn't another like it. So oneness kind of suggests that there must be a two, but that is not the case in relation to God. Nelam v'gam en sof le'achduto. There is also no end to his oneness. So if you can kind of hear the whole sort of philosophical discussion that's going on here, he is one, echad, ve'en yachid keyichudo. There is no oneness like his singularity. There is no singularity like his oneness. V'gam en sof le'achduto. And there is also no end to his oneness. So he is a singular entity which cannot be compared to any other entity, and which doesn't, there is no peer to God. There is no second, there is no third, and there is no division within God. There is no way of splitting God into different entities, as, for example, is done in some other religions. So that's the first verse. Ein lo demut haguf ve'ein no guf. Let's look at the translation on the left. God has neither form nor body. Ein lo demut haguf. God does not have a body, nor does he have the appearance of a body. So God does not exist materially. God does not take any form, and neither does he have the appearance of a form. So he doesn't appear as an angel or as a human or as something else. God has no form. Lo na'aroch elav kedushato. His holiness is beyond compare. He has a holiness that nobody else has. The second two lines of the second verse, kadmon lechol davar asher nivra. This is now the start of a new idea. Kadmon lechol davar means he is before. He comes before anything that was created. Kadmon lechol davar asher nivra. He came before anything that was ever created. Rishon ve'en reshit l'reshito. He is first, and there is nothing before his firstness. So these are difficult concepts, but it's similar to the oneness concept. God came before everything that was created. So what does that mean? It means that God was not created. So that's an interesting thought. God came before everything that was created. He is the creator. He was not created. He came before everything that was created. He is first, Rishon, first, Rosh. Ve'en reshit l'reshito. There is no beginning. There is no beginning to his being. There is nothing before God. There is nothing before his firstness. So to go back to the English on the left, God has neither form nor body. God is incorporeal, which means he has no physical form. God's holiness is beyond compare. God preceded all creation. God is the first and is uncreated. In other words, he is not, he is the creator. There is nothing that came before him. He is eternal. He has always been. So these are very big thoughts about very fundamental things. Casey has just shared an interesting thought. Perhaps the difficulty of the concept comes from using the pronoun he. Yes, and I suppose any pronoun, and of thinking of God as we think of people. Yeah, as we think of people. So Lawrence, or was it Jacob, used the word entity, and that's right. But even entity perhaps suggests something with boundaries.
Yeah.
And this is a conception of God who is first, but who is not even created. In other words, his firstness is the first thing. It's before anything. A God who is one, but whose oneness is particular, is singular, because there isn't a two. A God who has no body, God who has no form. Let's go on to verse 3. Hino Adon Olam. So Adon Olam, that's a phrase we know. That means the master of the universe. He is the master of the universe. L'chol notzar. And he is part of everything that is created, or everything that is created sees his greatness and his majesty. Or if we read on the left-hand side, the eternal who reveals greatness and sovereignty to every creature. And then it goes on. So that first line means God reveals his greatness and his sovereignty to every creature. So that's very interesting. L'chol notzar. So everything that is created is given the opportunity to see the greatness of God. So imagine that everything that is created has a relationship with God. And this begins in the sort of deeper aspects of Maimonides' philosophy to explain to us some of our responsibilities, because we have a relationship with God, and every creature, everything that is created has the opportunity to see the greatness of God. And therefore, we are no better. It's like we said this morning, God of the first and the last. God is the God of everything, and not only of human beings. Now, given all of that, how do we know about God? And here Maimonides comes with another concept, which means that God shares the gift of prophecy with certain people, and it is through them that we come to know of God's greatness. So those are two different ideas. First, we're told that, look, everything that is created can see God's greatness, but that God's greatness is mediated, explained, made clearer to us through certain people with whom he shares the gift of prophecy. And we certainly heard about Moses this morning and how important he was at the moment of the giving of the Torah, because God doesn't give the Torah directly to the people, and he doesn't talk directly to the people. And in fact, at the request of the people of Israel themselves, God talks to Moses as an intermediary with the people. And that brings us, in fact, to the fourth verse, which is exactly about that idea. Lo kam beYisrael k'Moshe od navi umabit et tmunato. There has not arisen among the people of Israel anybody like Moses, a prophet who saw his prophecy so clearly and who was so close to God. So Maimonides says there has never been someone like Moses. Now, the wonderful thing that happened after Maimonides died is that in the years that followed his death, people started to say this. They started to say, Mi Moshe ad Moshe en Moshe, which means from Moses to Moses, there was none like Moses. And that means that from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, who is recognized by Maimonides as the person with whom God established the closest relationship, from him until Moses Maimonides, there was no one else like either one of those Moses. In other words, that phrase, Mi Moshe ad Moshe en Moshe, kind of compares Maimonides to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu, and says in a way that the one who is perhaps a little like Moses is in fact Maimonides himself, is in fact Moses, because he was such a great teacher of Jewish law. But he himself, now we're talking Maimonides, says, Lo kan Israel ka Moshe, or no one has arisen in Jewish life like Moses. We then go on in the same verse to the next idea. Torat emet natan le'amo el, al yad nevi'o ne'eman beto. God gave a Torah of truth to his people. Torat emet natan le'amo el, and indeed that is exactly what we are celebrating tonight. We are celebrating the giving of the Torah to the people of Israel. And it's one of the articles of faith that the Torah is a Torah of truth and was given to the people of Israel. And by whose hand was it given? Who assisted God in this process was, of course, Moshe, al yad nevi'o ne'eman beto, on the hand of his faithful servant Moses. So also watching the time, I'm going to go on now to the second last verse. Lo yachalif ha'el, v'lo yamir dato. God will not change, and God will not also kind of change his mind. Le'olamim ulezulato. God is eternal. God is unchanging. So while we may learn and develop, change our minds, please God, many times in our lives, because that's what learning requires, while we improve ourselves, that is not the lot of God. God does not change. God is a perfect entity that is not subject to change. That is not subject to change. The second two lines of that stanza, God knows and understands our secrets. And God can see the end of a matter at its beginning. Mm-hmm. So God has insight into all of our lives. And when something starts on earth, God can see how it will end. The last verse, Gomel leish chesed kemif'alo, noten l'rasha ra kerishato. God will reward a good person in accordance with their goodness. People will be rewarded for good deeds. Noten l'rasha ra kerishato, and those who are evil will receive punishment according to their evil. Or if it's translated here on the left, God deals kindly with those who merit kindness and brings upon the wicked the evil consequences of their deeds. It does not say that will happen in this lifetime, but that will happen. Yishlach leketz yamin al kol basar rucho lifdot mecha keketz Yeshuato. At the end of days, God's Spirit will be sent to all flesh, redeeming all humanity. That means that essentially that there will one day be an end of days, that the Messiah will come, and that God will be directly revealed to all humanity, and that humanity will be redeemed. And finally, the very last line, Chaye olam nata b'tochenu. God has implanted within us eternal life. So Maimonides says we as Jews believe that life is eternal, that we do not die at the end of our period on earth. And he ends with a simple praise, or Yigdal ends with a simple praise, Baruch adei ad shem tehilato. May God's glorious name be blessed unto all eternity. So, so that's a lot, and it doesn't quite come across in all of its detail in the translation. So I'm just going to read to you a summary of the 13 principles of faith, and you'll recognize them from what you've just heard. Article number 1 is belief in the existence of the Creator, who is perfect in every manner, and is the primary cause of all existence. That's the first article of faith, that we believe in God and that we believe that God is the Creator. Number 2, the belief that God is absolute and has an unparalleled unity. Number 3, the belief in God's non-corporeality, in other words, that God does not have a body, and that he will not be affected by any physical occurrences such as movement, that he cannot be seen. Number 4 is the belief in God's eternity, that God is eternal. Number 5, we believe that it is imperative to worship God only and not to worship any other, any false gods. I can't even say other gods because there are no other gods, not to worship any false gods. Number 6, the belief that God communicates with humans in part through prophets. Number 7, the idea that Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, is the primary prophet, the one who, in some sense, lent a hand to God the most in being a teacher to the Jewish people. Number 8, the belief in the divine origin of the Torah. Number 9, the belief in the immutability of God. That means that God does not change. Number 10, the belief in God's omniscience, that God is everywhere and knows everything. Number 11, the belief in divine reward and retribution, the idea that there is a reward and punishment. Number 12, the belief in the arrival of the Messiah and the Messianic era. And number 13, the belief in the resurrection of the dead. So that is how Maimonides understood the basic beliefs of Judaism. Now, just to let you know, so this is written 1,000 years ago, nearly 1,900 years ago. And I'll just tell you that there are many other Jewish scholars who don't share Maimonides' view that these are all required beliefs of Jews. You may find that some of those beliefs are not beliefs that you hold. It doesn't mean you're not Jewish, doesn't mean you can't be Jewish. But this is how Moses Maimonides, the Rambam, the great scholar of Jewish law, sets out what he believes to be the core principles, the core beliefs of the Jewish people. And it is then set to music. It's actually been set to lots of different tunes. I'm told here in an article I've read that Yigdal is set to more tunes than Adon Olam, which I was very surprised at, because Adon Olam is set to so many tunes. But it's one that perhaps we don't sing often enough, and one which we need to spend more time on. Did Maimonides get into trouble for these principles? So Maimonides, yes, one of the great things about Jewish intellectual life is that there is a great deal of argument. There's a great deal of debate. And what Maimonides is doing, he is interpreting the Mishnah, which is one of the books of the Talmud, which in itself is full of debate and disagreement. So it is really wonderful part of Jewish life that we disagree and we debate everything, and we don't simply say, well, this is the end of the story. And in that sense, the wonderful thing about Shavuot is that we enter into this covenant, we receive the Torah, but it is also the job of each generation to interpret the Torah for their circumstances and to set out to set out on our own paths. What I do think is wonderful about Maimonides is his idea that all of Jewish life exists to magnify the soul. It's really great that we have this opportunity to recognize that we are born with a neshama and that our job is to magnify that soul as we go through life. I think it's also the case that we've been looking at some of the 13 articles of faith in the newsletter. I think it's Jacob who's been putting that into the newsletter, which is, I think, a wonderful idea and something that we can continue to debate and discuss. But I see we are beginning to run out of time. Some people still want to join the Shavuot service tonight. Some people might still study tonight. What I hope I've done is just to whet your appetite, if I can put it that way, for the works of Moses Maimonides, for understanding his ideas of the articles of faith, for knowing a little bit about his life, and for having some access to the song. And that when you hear this beautiful, beautiful song being sung in shul, that you understand at least a little of the tremendous complexity behind it and of the beauty of many of the ideas. Thank you, Riva. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. That was very beautiful, Lael. I don't think we have to rush. We can always pick up any other service if we'd like to and join at any one time. That is the nature of tonight, that people join when they want to. And I can just say that your words are really prophetic, because Judaism above all, and that's why I love it and I love your teaching, is that at the heart of Judaism, it encourages you never just to have a blind adherence to anything, and to make up your own mind and to choose your own ideas, but to stay with the basic values of just how we treat each other, how we treat the world, how we treat animals, how we treat people that we meet, no matter of what caste or background. And I think you've brought that out so beautifully tonight, and it allows for diversity. As our own country's constitutions, the two constitutions were the same. So thank you, Lael. We love your teaching. We love to listen to you, and we could go on. But thank you for this morning. Thank you for this evening. And for those of you who would like to join any other shuls, there are shuls all over the world tonight doing this themselves. And also, as David started last night, bringing you into the conversation, asking you to question, asking you to put your ideas forward until we all find the common ground of loving the other as ourselves. So if I can just say, there are quite a few options, I believe, Jacob. You can join Beit Emmanuel anytime. The World Union for Progressive Judaism is also having their Shavuot discussion for quite a long time. And Jacob, I believe you've put on our website all the different links. And I think, and there's also one from Cape Town tonight.
Well,
So
the WUPJ one and the Cape Town one are the same.
Oh, are they the same? I didn't know that.
And the Cape Town one, there's a bit of a difficulty getting into it. I would suggest Beit Emmanuel to everybody.
If you'd like to carry on, or carry on by yourself, or go on Google, or go to Beit Emmanuel. And now tomorrow morning, Beit Emmanuel is going to continue with the Shavuot discussion, if you like. It is on Zoom. I think we've sent that link to everyone, have we, Jacob?
Yes, I have.
Tomorrow morning.
You was kind enough to send an email to each and every person.
Yeah. And what time does that start? Is it 9:30?
9:30 tomorrow morning.
9:30 tomorrow morning is yet another discussion of learning of Torah, of just awe at having received this type of incredible book of laws and how we should act as all humanity and to all humanity. And then after tomorrow morning, is there anything else tomorrow that we should know of, Jacob?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so we'll give everyone a break. And except tomorrow, there is the conversion class, which we're very excited about. Everyone is with us this evening, with the exception of Kevin. And I think, you know, it's changed for tomorrow from 1 o'clock till 2 to 3:30. And that, of course, is also another form of learning. So perhaps that's what we, the Jewish people, are, students of Hashem's words. So if you're not on the conversion course tomorrow, Baruch Hashem, we'll be seeing you next Shabbat, and wait for the headlines from Temple Israel Hillbrow. So I can't say Shabbat Shalom. We finish Shabbat.
Yeah, and we can't even really say Shavuot Tov because it kind of.
I know we can't.
Yeah.
All I can say is Chag Sameach Shavuot.
That's right, Riva. Chag Shavuot Sameach, everybody. Chag Sameach.
Okay, which means a wonderful feast. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you, Keisha.
Casey, are you coming back from Canada? Or are you going to stay there?
Oh my goodness, of course I'm coming back. This is where I live.
We wouldn't let her go. We wouldn't let her go for more than a week or two.
But you just stay there until the weather warms up in South Africa again.
I'm just visiting my parents.
Wonderful.
Chag
Enjoy,
Sameach,
enjoy.
everybody.
Okay, so that's who's still with us. Lisa, thanks for your words.
Everybody.
Thanks, Melvin, darling. Thanks, Lisa, for your kind words. Lisa, Regina, Torai, John, who's, thank God, and Kevin, who is with us. There's my Torai. We'll see
Right
you
here.
tomorrow at 2 o'clock to 3:30. And for the rest of you, Chag Shavuot, I want to hear it all said Sameach.
Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thanks, Lawrence. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Oh, yes, vegetable soup. The recipe for
Good.
the vegetable soup. You said
Send
you'd
some
get it from
over.
that lady. Okay, we're waiting for it. And I'll make some for you. Okay, thank
You've got a
you.
deal. You've
God
got a
bless.
deal and a date.
Thank you, sweetheart. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you, Jacob, so much. Bye.